Hi everyone, Sharee from Ashima Living here. Welcome to today's Facebook Live. If you're wondering who I am, I'm a naturopath, yoga and meditation teacher dedicated to helping people overcome stress, anxiety and depression. And today what I really wanted to talk about was whether stress could be sabotaging your health and your happiness without you even realizing it. And maybe it would sound strange that I would say without you even realizing it. But as a naturopath, what I've noticed is, to me as a practitioner with a lot of my patients, it can be very apparent to me that they're suffering from a lot of stress and that it's impacting their health and contributing to their symptoms and their state of mind. But often when I ask them if they're feeling stressed, they say, no, not really. And I'm always a bit surprised by this. And so a lot of the time what we do is we get them to take do a cortisol blood test, salivary test, which will measure the stress hormones throughout the day. And they're often off the charts, and people are quite surprised when they get these results back to actually realize that they are so stressed. And I think one of the reasons why it can be easy for us not to realize how stressed we are is because everyone around us is stressed. We're living in a society and in a modern day lifestyle that is very stressful, but because it's just so prevalent, it appears normal to us. And so we don't really realize the impact that it can be having on us. And I kind of think of it as, like that metaphorical frog in boiling water where the temperature's slowly rising and the frog doesn't realize that he's getting cooked to death. So, on that note, it's interesting to know that the World Health Organization has said that stress is like the health epidemic of the 21st century. It's depression and anxiety are now leading causes of disability in the world. And something like 3 out of 4 doctor visits are stress related, or the illnesses have a stress related component to them. So it is a really serious thing when it comes to our health. So what I want to talk about quickly is that physiological side of stress that not all of us are always aware of. So, we all know that if we perceive something stressful, we might feel a lot of these mental or emotional symptoms. We might feel uptight or agitated or restless or anxious or irritable. But it doesn't just live up in our heads or in our emotions. It very tangibly affects our bodies as well. And that's because whenever we perceive something stressful, the brain triggers a whole cascade of physiological responses. So this is known as the stress response. So we release certain hormones, things like cortisol, noradrenaline, and they affect our bodies in different ways because from a biological or from an evolutionary perspective, we're wired, as the cave people we once were, to run away from our stressors. Back then, our stressors were running away from a bear or a tiger, and these hormones would, flood us full of energy, get the blood pumping to our heart and to our muscles so that we could run and we could escape. Then we would get away from the danger and it would switch off and we'd go back to being relaxed. So this response, it's sending blood to the muscles, to the heart, to the brain, but it really diverts resources away from body systems that in that moment of danger aren't deemed important. So things like the immune system, the digestive system, the reproductive and hormonal systems. And so that's fine if our stress is short-lived, as we're wired to, as we've adapted to. But the problem with modern day life is that our stress isn't short-lived and acute. It's now chronic and long-term. It's things we can't just run away from. Things, for example, it could be as simple as sitting in heavy traffic every day, or, having to go to a job that we don't like, or living in an unnatural environment, with bright lights and polluted air and noise and that kind of thing. Things like no longer living in tribal type communities, having to raise our children on our own. Plus then, bring in things like inflammatory diets and no connection to nature. All of these things add up. And what happens is that stress response that gets triggered, it never gets a chance to turn off. And so when it's constantly on, it means that it can really affect these other systems in the body, things like the immune system. That's why we can get sick regularly with colds and flus. if we're chronically stressed, or worse, autoimmune diseases as well. Things like our hormonal system, so thyroid issues, for women, menstrual problems, menopausal issues, fertility problems are massively on the rise. And a big part of that can be stress related. Digestive issues, irritable bowel syndrome, acid reflux, stomach ulcers, all sorts of digestive issues. And that again is because of this stress response that is just on, chronically turned on and never really getting turned off. So that's the physiological basis of stress. And I've actually created a free stress assessment to help you take a look at that and have a look at how your stress might be affecting you and what ways it might be affecting your body. And it also looks at internal and external sources of stress. So I'll just touch on that briefly. And an external source of stress is something that's happening in your environment that can be a source of stress. So that could be, for example, maybe going through a divorce or a breakup, changing jobs, moving house, even going traveling or going on a holiday. So it doesn't necessarily matter if it's what we would judge as positive or negative. A lot of these life transitions can be quite stressful for us as well. And it can be useful to just look back over the last year or two and see how many you might have gone through and if that's affecting you. That's in the stress assessment as well. But also internal sources of stress. So it's not just our environment that can be exerting stress on us. It can also be what's going on in our minds. So if we have certain thoughts or beliefs that are negative or very stressful, then we're actually turning on that stress response from within our own minds. So what I mean by that is, for example, if you have a lot of self-criticism, if you're always, on your own back, harsh with yourself, judging yourself, your brain will perceive that as an attack. It will perceive it in the same way as if you had someone else following you around all day, criticizing you, which is pretty awful when you think about it. So, that can be a huge source of stress for some people. Maybe having a belief that you're, that you're all alone, that you've got all these problems on your own back, that you can't ask for help. Having a belief that everything has to be perfect, that you have to aim really high and then beating up on yourself if you don't reach those standards. These are all internal beliefs that we may not even realize that we have, that can be a huge source of stress for ourselves as well. And then the other thing when we're looking at stress to think about is our coping mechanisms. And sometimes we may not realize that we have coping mechanisms. They can be positive or negative, and we may be oblivious to them. So it's really just getting clear on how we respond to our own stress. Do we respond in a helpful, proactive way, or do we respond in a way that's maybe not so helpful? So for example, let's say you're feeling really stressed and you're feeling a bit burnt out and a bit tired, and it means you can't be bothered cooking, a nutritious meal for yourself. So you start eating something that's, a bit more junky or a bit bad for you. Or instead of going out and exercising or meeting up and seeing a friend, you feel like just being on your own and watching TV. And that's fine every now and then, but if it's becoming a habit because you're coping with this stress in this way, then you can be compounding your stress because of the way that you're kind of negatively coping. On the contrary, you may be very good at recognizing when you're stressed and saying, you know what, I need a weekend away. I need to be extra careful with eating foods that don't upset me, maybe avoiding coffee or sugar or that kind of thing. I need to get out and see my friends or, take part in my community, have a bit more fun, pursue a creative hobby. These are all positive ways to cope with stress. So I've included that in the stress assessment as well so that you can get an idea of how you respond to your stress levels. So I encourage you to go and check that out. It's totally free. You just go to ashimaliving.com/assess your stress. So Ashima is ASHIMA. I'm going to link to it either above or below this video, but if you're seeing this live, you probably won't see the link. But it's ashimaliving.com/assess your stress. And as I say, it's totally free. You can download it. It'll probably take you about 10 or 15 minutes to go through. And it will just give you a really good idea about, if you do have any symptoms that could be coming from stress, any physical symptoms, any of those internal beliefs that could be compounding your stress, your coping mechanisms, and also just having a bit of a clearer look at any external sources of stress. So I encourage you to go ahead and take a look at that. I think it's a really useful tool, and I will see you next time. Thanks so much. Bye.